And I'll also quickly show you how you could pull some stuff back from Vista. But there's a lot of opportunity around eHMP. The stuff that's being worked on at VA is generally around the clinical data. But there's a lot more data in Vista besides just clinical data. So there's a lot of opportunity to use this. I guess it's more of a platform to expose data out of Vista and also combine other data sources with it in one common UI framework. That there's just a lot of potential there. So I'll show you how we do that real quick. We'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I wanted to show is the resource directory. This is all the resources that are available in the RDK. So I'm going to pull up the one that's here on my machine. Okay, so these are the various resources that you could call back. These first couple ones are not too terribly exciting. Looks like I still have my weather suits. Yeah. So, but you can see we can get some other interesting things. Let's see. So another one we could look at is let's see. So there's besides just being able to pull data back, you can also push data in, which we'll go over that in a little bit too. Let me show you one particular resource here. So we'll pull back. Look, so we can see this is data coming out of Vista, and it's formatted as JSON data, so you could then consume it by the UI later. But the first thing we're going to do is to add another data source in here, besides the ones that were listed in the resource directory that we were just looking at. Let's see, so there's, again, that's all the resources. So maybe I need to back up a little bit. So what we're doing is we have all of these set up as virtual machines, and this is the way that it was designed by Accenture, where we have two Vista systems, this one Panorama and Kodak, and Mox has got test code, and there's a couple other little things running on this Mox server, like there's a Solar database on here, and then there's JDS, which is helping us get the data from Panorama and Kodak. And then VxSync is responsible for the syncing, and then the RDK is the thing we're looking at today, which once you get through all of this, the Vista Exchange stack, things get to the RDK, where we can then expose them as JSON, and then the UI. So that's the various machines. That's all the stuff that needs to be running on the developer box to be able to do development with on eHMP. It does require significant system resources. You need we've been recommending 16 gigs of RAM to do this, and it's much easier on OS X than it is on Windows. The scripts were designed for Linux, so a Linux box makes it run a little bit better. So the similarity between that and OS X, which is what all of this was built on, it's just a lot easier to get started. JBPM is part of eHMP, and it's used for task management, and that may be a good topic for another one of these as to how we use tasks and activities in eHMP. But so today, let's go finish going over the RDK. So these machines are rebuilt using Chef scripts, which we'll do that in just a second. But here's we're going to hook up weather data and pull that back. So I'm just going to show you that real quick. We'll pull this down. This is what it would look like. That's my local weather here in Reading, Pennsylvania. And we're going to pull this into the UI basically by calling this API here from Weather Underground. So the way we'll do that is the first thing that we have to do is to go to and add in those resources. Everything in the project is set up underneath this Vista Core directory. So we're going to be working with the RDK, and I will navigate to these just so it's a little easier for you to understand like where we're going versus me doing all this from the command line. I think it's just a little easier to follow this way, even though it's a lot more clicking. So everything is, when you go to these various projects, there's RDK, the ADK, eHMP UI, eHMP, which is all the Exchange components, and then there's the Chef repo. This can be configured in multiple ways. This code we're looking at is the stuff that's currently released, OSEHRA 2.0 code from Accenture that's out on OSEHRA right now. I think my link works. Yeah, this might not be the right. But this is the latest code that Accenture released to OSEHRA that we're working with today. But I'll go back to where. So again, here's the projects: ADK, eHMP UI, RDK. So we're going to go here under Product, Production, RDK, and then in the source, there's the resources. So each resource has a file or a folder if it's a little more complex. What we're going to do is add this weather folder that's here on my desktop. So just drag that in there, and we'll look at that. But there's mainly these three files. This one is the one doing all the work, and this is just. Show you these real quick. There's not much in here to return in case we run into some problems. But let's start here. So on this one, this is we're just basically doing a basic fetch from Weather Underground. This is my API key for Weather Underground. And what's happening here is it's looking up my city by the address, and that's just part of that Weather Underground API. And then there's the link where I'm just putting it together. In previous versions of this demo, I would just had hard-coded the data in here, and that's what you see under this bar, weather local data. This is my data from, I guess, the last time I did this demo, which was June 21st. But all we're basically doing is calling that API, pulling it back, and posting the data into this variable, weather local data. And then we'll expose that in the RDK. So there's not much to adding a data source. So where this becomes valuable is if you were going to build something that you also wanted to expose through eHMP, like a bed management system or Capri or any of the other things that are related systems that could stand a new UI. This is a way you could do that and still have a common UI. Use the same login verify code and all of that stuff that we currently use. This is how you could add another data source, or maybe it's some other sort of clinical decision support tool. You could link to the data this very same way. So the last part of adding this is we have to back up a little bit and go to RDK folder. In bin, there's a list of all of the resources. sure why that's taking so long. So this is all of them right here that are currently available. And we saw those exposed earlier through the resource directory. So this is all the ones for Get, but these are all the ones that are available for writing. There's probably more now, but this is just what was released in the latest OSEHRA build. I'm guessing there's probably quite a bit more, but these are things where you can do some write back. So going back to here, this is where we have to make that resource, that weather resource available. I have it commented out. Just added it to the top just to make it easy. So basically, we're just telling it for weather, this is where it will find it. So that's pretty straightforward. Save this file. And then now we need to rebuild RDK. So So we're going to the directory. We're going to source the project. This is the same directory we were in earlier, Vista Core RDK. Because I'm using a local chef repo, I'm going to set this to true. If you were doing a larger project with multiple developers, you would want to set up a chef repo that you guys all share, like the way that Accenture does it. For just one developer, having it local makes the most sense. And then we'll run a Gradle script. And that's it. But before we do that, I want to show you there's a lot more there. So let's let it pull it back. These are all the possible commands you can do from Gradle. So the one that we were going to do is to redeploy the RDK, which is right here. So we'll go ahead and do that now. But if you forget what the commands are, you can always come back here to Gradle tasks and look them up, which I do all the time. Okay, this is going to take like 7 or 8 minutes to do because it's going to test all this code as it rebuilds that virtual machine right there. So I don't know if we can do questions right now, but I was thinking now is probably a good time for questions. Is that possible, Peter?
Yeah. Also, so the way we do questions is have people use the chat, send us a question,
okay,
and then we'll then ask the question.
How do we do that?
Okay. Do you see any questions?
Over to Jack.
Jack, do you have any questions?
Yeah, there should all be on mute. Do we need to use the chat?
Yeah. Nobody's asking yet?
Okay. Well, I'll just talk about stuff. Well, I can show you where the documentation is while this is building, but basically this is the script that we had just kicked off. And during the install process, which, by the way, OSEHRA is working on making the install instructions and a lot of this stuff easier. The hardest part of the learning curve with the eHMP is the install process because a lot of these tools are new, and it does take a little getting used to. But it is a nice tool set once you have it together because it does test everything when you go through and add new code. You know, or you have a good idea that you're not breaking something else. So right now, while that chef script's running, we can look. There is besides the thing we were looking at earlier. There's also documentation on the ADK that's available via VAFTL. and the thing we were just looking at, the RDK, there's some documentation on it and how you add to it. But it really is pretty simple. Basically, it's that little piece of code we added is going to add a resource. In a few minutes, it'll come back. I'll show you how we call the resource. But adding a resource is pretty straightforward.
Brent, there's actually a question now. Go ahead.
One question is, why so many VMs?
Well, there's actually even more, in my understanding, on a larger production system, and I don't know why they broke it up this way. There are, if we look at some of these are rather large. If they were combined together, they would be even bigger. The VX Sync machine is fairly large. And I think some of it was just to compartmentalize certain pieces. I think we'd have to ask Jason Ray or some of the others who architected it this way. But so these are the two Vista machines. They're not too big, but some of these others get up in size. I don't know how sticking them all together would really be make it that much easier. The other thing is, so Accenture, when they were doing this development, there's like 100 developers working at once, and they're checking in code all the time, and they have a continuous integration process, and they're all working on different parts of the system. So these machines are all getting rebuilt, not just locally, but in their continuous integration environment. And I think by compartmentalizing it like this, it makes it a little easier to support. But it leaves us with this structure now for developers. So this is the minimum set of machines you need. That Windows desktop is just so I can run Windows applications on my machine, but the rest of these are part of eHMP.
Another question. I'm sorry, you finished?
Go ahead.
Another question is, since the world works on Windows, how well distributed is OS X, since you appear to state that all of this is based upon OS X?
Right. Well, again, they were building to put it onto a Linux stack, so they developed on OS X laptops. There's an eHMP ITS team that's working with VA FTL to convert all of this stuff to Windows. They have a 1.3 version that works on Windows, and I think they'll have a 2.0 version very soon. And I'm guessing that code will eventually get released to OSEHRA as well. And all it really is different build scripts. But a lot of these tools like Chef and Chef DK and Vagrant and VirtualBox, getting one set of scripts that works across both OS X and Windows is fairly difficult. The Windows stuff can be done, but it's a little more finicky, especially since everything was architected from the beginning to run on production on Linux boxes. So that's my opinion as to why it's easier to do it with OS X. But there will be Windows resources coming out soon for people to work with.
Thank you.
There are also pre-built virtual machines where I don't know if VA is going to release these or if it's just for internal VA use, but there's pre-built virtual machines where you can just take these machines and they can stand them up for you in the innovation lab and use them there. I guess that's a limited resource, right? They can't do that for everybody, but there is some capability to do that as well. Looks like we're getting close.
Another one. Is there guidance you can provide about how to troubleshoot and debug the installation process? And is there a wiki or FAQ that shows common errors and resolutions?
I think there is an FAQ. I don't know the link to that. I think we can get that. There's a lot of stuff on VAFTL besides just this documentation. They have other documentation, and they've documented some of the problems that they found. The most common problem with the installs of this is using the wrong version of Chef, the wrong version of Chef DK, wrong version of Vagrant or VirtualBox. If you're using a newer version, sometimes that breaks the scripts. If you're using if you have different version set of those 4 products, tend to run into problems. If you were going to attempt to improve these scripts, which I think will happen once more people are able to use this in open source or through OSEHRA, I feel like these scripts will get a lot better, and this install process will improve dramatically. And I think Peter actually has somebody working on this very problem right now. But right now it's difficult, and if you need help, I think the best place is to ask in the community or via VAFTL for your show your error and let us try to help you fix it. Do we have any more? It's like once it gets past this little Oracle thing here, it should be almost done. It usually takes about 10 minutes for it to finish this.
Just one more. This may be a little out of context, but that build is still running. If you make changes, do you need to run that build again?
Yes, that. On the RDK, you do. You don't necessarily need to do that for every one of the boxes, but for most of the back-end pieces, like JDS, if you mess with the Vista Systems, MOX, VXSync, or RDK, you need to redo the build. There is a show that real quick. There is a shortcut to some of these, so you don't have to do the full build. Ready to go. Yeah, you can just, on some of them, you can just do a reload. We probably could have gotten away with that here. But some of them, the only choice is to do a full deploy. But anyway, so another thing that we've noticed, it's a little slower when you're using a local Chef repo versus Chef server. So I used to be able to do this in about 5 minutes, and the only thing that's really changed is I'm using a local Chef repo. But again, setting up a Chef server for one developer that's kind of a heavy lift. It's a lot just to be able to do development on here. So okay, so that's done. Let's go and look at what we did. Hopefully, it might still be restarting. I guess we'll see here pretty soon. The first call is always a little slower. So we added, there's our weather service that we added. So let's just try this real quick. need to be authenticated. I'm just doing this to make it easier to authenticate. All right, so we'll go back. Well, that wasn't the right response. Something wrong here. I didn't let it load long enough. Let's go back. Yeah, should have let it finish. It is a little slow on a developer workstation. Double check when you get this right. Added that. All right. There we go. Okay, so there's the weather data. That's from basically right now. So that's how the resource is exposed. So now we're going to go, especially since it's already 3:35, and add the add a applet to the UI. So we'll go ahead and load this data while this is. I'm sure most of you have probably seen this before in other presentations on eHMP, but we're going to create one of these applets basically just in a table form like this, just to basically give you an example of what that's like. Fortunately, that doesn't usually require rebuilding the ADK or eHMP UI server. So navigate to that real quick. We'll go back to projects, Vista Core, This time we're going to go to eHMP UI, and then everything's always in this product directory. Product, production, and then applets. So this is all of the applets, like these that you're seeing here. We need to add one for weather, which I have over here on my desktop somewhere. There it is. Again, this is not; these aren't very complicated either. It's really in this assets folder. This is just a little piece of CSS code. So that's not much to that. But the other is just this applet code. And so the applet, these are going to be the columns for when we bring back the data. This stuff is described in the ADK documentation that we were looking at earlier. If you're looking to figure out what the various components are, and that's for using any of the ADK infrastructure that's already in place. The ADK documentation also talks about how to extend it if you wanted to have a different way besides a table or any of the other views that Accenture's already come up with. And then, of course, we're just fetching that weather data and returning it to those columns. So that's all that's going on in that applet.js. There's just really not that much to it to get it to view data. I think it's one of the great features of eHMP. So we've added this weather applet. We need to go into applet manifest so that it knows it's there, so this, again, it's just a list of all of the applets that are currently available. I'm going to add this one to the end. Basically looks just like all the rest. Oops. Save this. And then we should be able to go back to here. We do need to refresh the page. So it's going to reload the applet, which is why this takes so long, or reload the whole single page app. So we'll go, now we're going to create a different view, and this is something that a typical user can do. Go down here to this user-defined workspace, launch this, click on that button, look over here, and now there's weather. So we just drag that down here. Summary view, because that's the only one we built. And then push done. And there's the weather for Reading right now. And again, like how you decide to display this data, you can just come here and look at the documentation on the ADK and the various pieces and components it will explain to you. But back. That's basically how that works for building an applet. It's pretty simple to just build on top of this framework. And that's pretty much all I had to show. So we added a new data source. We pulled back the sites from Vista. We've now exposed a new data source via an applet, and it's pretty simple code. We could build one. We could do a different thing for if we wanted to build a whole Capri dashboard like this, or DMS, or blood bank or any other system you might need, maybe scheduling or something. So does anybody have any questions about this?
One question from a little earlier, is there a way to view the logs of the servers to see what is happening and the server status?
Yes, you have to SSH into these machines. There may be some other way to do it, but that's how I do it. Let's see, where'd they go? So you can SSH into each one. The way that these are configured right now, you just SSH into the machine. The username is Vagrant, password is Vagrant, and then you can see the logs for the various processes that are on each one. Any more questions?
Yeah, we can unmute somebody.
Just hold on, Brent. We're going to unmute someone who has a long question to ask.
Yeah, we have a question that says that the question is too big for the box. So what we're going to do is try to find that person, unmute them so that they can ask the question verbally.
Okay.
Okay, so apparently whoever's asking that question dialed in but didn't use an attendee ID when they dialed in on audio, so we can't distinguish who you are. If you want to, while we take other questions, if whoever wants to quickly go out and come back in through the web app and use the attendee ID, we can then tell who you are and try to unmute you. But as it is, we can't get to you from here. What else do we have?
And also to note, we will send out the link to the FAQs because someone was nice enough to send that in.
Well, yeah, I don't know if there's anybody else that has any questions. I mean, or maybe topics on eHMP that we should cover the next time we do one of these, or do you have a different way of handling that, Peter?
Oh, we missed that. What did you ask, Brent?
What other topics should we cover on eHMP development in the future?
Well, I think we could get some feedback from the community, given that this is going to go out and people are going to probably respond to it with additional questions. But I know you mentioned about the JPPM. Currently, you have that loaded. But I think a lot of most people in the community probably doesn't have much idea of what that thing does. I know it's related to the activity management, and we saw some demo a few weeks back with Shane, Dr. Shane Magnamy. But that would be something that of interest.
Yeah, and then I think Ben also showed that at Ben from Accenture showed that at the OSEHRA conference, because that was something they had just started getting to a decent level of completion about July. But yeah, basically it is that. So it's expanded to-do list. You've got like task for a patient. that need to be done, and tasks for the particular clinician that need to be done, and they all need to be managed, or maybe it's a care group or whatever, but JBPM helps manage all of that and keep it straight, and make, by doing it that way, it does reduce some of the alerts that come out, because if somebody resolves something, then you don't get to see those messages anymore. So there are some decent ideas that Shane and some of the others had with how to use activity management, but it all runs on top of that JBPM server. So maybe we could do another one of these about that. Ben may be a better person to give that one, but I think we can probably get him to do it. But I'm happy to if he's too busy.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is since this is a 2.0, you have ability to write back. So potentially, you could create orders and update information on to this mock service, correct?
That's true. Yeah, you could. I've never tried to create orders because I never worked on that section of eHMP. We usually worked on labs, this stuff here, and some of the other components. Write back of orders. I mean, I guess we could do it, but I don't know. I'd probably want to practice it first before trying to demo it. But this code, and I haven't tried it on this code set, but this is the stuff that was most recently pushed to OSEHRA from Accenture via VA and Code in Flight, I think. So that's what's running here that you're seeing on my machine, and that chef repo came from there. The components that are missing is that there are stuff that Code in Flight takes out, like IP addresses, which again, that's things that Peter and his team are working to make it to where it's easier to have that stuff be put back in once it's delivered to OSEHRA. And then there's the other issue is the way this currently runs. You need a cache license. So obviously VA can't distribute that, so you'll have to provide your own there. I don't know that it needs to be a full production license, but you need a cache license. There's a bunch of Oracle components that are licensed in such a way that the developer will need to get them themselves, like, for instance, Java. But there are other things out there that are also like that, to where the licensing prevents redistribution. But we'll have instructions on how to get that stuff, what exactly you need to download, because even though it can't be redistributed, it's still open source. So you can go and get it yourself and pull it in and build it anyway.
Additional questions, go ahead.
How are you connecting to Vista?
Well, we connect through JDS, and I was hoping to have somebody on here that could talk more about that, because I'm not a JDS expert. But yeah, so we're connecting through JDS. I think these are all RPC calls, but I'm not sure.
RPC calls. The last time I heard it was RPC. I know they were talking about maybe using EWD.js or something like that, but eventually Vista.js.
And I'm not sure that there's any one way either that they're connecting to get everything they need. Yeah, I think we'll have to take that one offline and can get a better answer.
One more. Can a different company develop applets for eHMP?
Well, I don't see why not. I mean, the code's out on OSEHRA. It seems would be easy enough for someone else to build applets. And I think that's VA's intent and OSEHRA's intent. Right now, all the applets that are being built are clinical in nature. So, at least in my 2 senses, that leaves a lot of opportunity for everyone else, since there's a whole lot of other stuff happening with regards to healthcare data besides eHMP or clinical data.
Yeah, this is Sung Ki Moon. It is OSEHRA's intent supporting VA's vision of making this platform widely available for anyone who is interested in using it for whatever applications they might be interested. My only additional wish is whoever wants to work with eHMP really should stay engaged with the community so we can learn from one another. Jack.
Jack, we got you unmuted. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, this is the Dangerous Mountain Engineer, Brent. Jack Taylor from Bits Incorporated. And the questions I was sending by chat were the use of OS X Linux when the world runs on Windows. And I just wanted to know what the plan was to move from that or to add a fully compatible active Windows capability, because that's where 90% of us are.
Well, I don't want to start a religious war, but at the same time,
Perfect answer.
it was designed for Linux. So, and that was one of VA's design specifications, I think, is that it run on Linux in production. So that's the main reason, I think, that Accenture started development with OS X. But the similarities there between the OS X operating system and Linux are pretty tight. That stuff's getting better even with Windows. Windows is adding more support for bash scripts and some of that stuff every day, it seems. So this stuff will get better. But I also feel like the main thing that's going to make an improvement there so that we can get this stuff running on Windows and being backwards compatible will probably be just getting it into the open source community where more people can get their hands on it. I think this install process will get a lot easier and a lot smoother for a single developer scenario where, you know, Accenture built all this infrastructure to support a large group. So it's a little complicated for just one person to use. But we do have a running version of eHMP, or let's see, the VA has a running version of eHMP version 1.3 that runs these scripts, and they have that at VAFTL, and I think that's eventually going to go through Code and Flight, and I think a 2.0 version is probably not far behind. So there's potential.
Yeah, this is key. Let's start a religious conversation. I heard a Microsoft guy's barking in the behind.
No, that's Duncan's son, Keith.
Well, I couldn't tell. I mean, but anyway, I'm sure there will be this will be made available in multiple platforms as we go forward. If you don't have any more questions, do we have any?
We had one more. Does he need to be unmuted, or can he type it? Hi. Who is it? Gus, do you have a question?
Yeah, I missed the first 10 minutes of the presentation, and but so far your design looks very clean and intuitive. My question is your design responsive?
A little. But they had, we're working under some VA design guidelines, and the screen size, the way that they set it up was for a specific screen size. So if I do take, like, I think this is what you're asking,
yep.
It's not going to, it'll work a little bit, but it can only get so small. And I wouldn't try pulling it up on a phone. Now, but that's again, that's to VA design constraints. So with just a little bit of work, because we're already using a Backbone.js framework, we're using the components of a single-page application. With just a little bit of work, it could be turned into a responsive design.
Okay, thanks.
So currently,
you have the infrastructure.
Currently, it's not specced for like iPad. Or is it?
Yeah. Yeah, this run, it looks great on an iPad Pro.
Okay.
Yeah. But also you should be able to sub-select, this is Jack Taylor, what you want to see and delete what you don't want to see, and therefore
and yeah, we
you
could
can bring
do that.
it down
so
to an iPhone.
I could bring some of these views are set up to where you can't change them, but others, like I could rebuild that exact same view we were looking at earlier, and then only use the ones I want. Like we could build this, could drag allergies over here. I could say I want the smaller one. You know, I can rebuild it however I want, and then make it a little smaller. But I don't think it would take many hours of work.
No, this is the stuff I worked with Jonathan Nebeker on 2.5 years ago to the initial joint legacy viewer. And what you're doing is maturing the joint legacy viewer into an application that works. I'm a little uncomfortable with the OS X, but that I'm just a damn doctor, not a technologist. And if you can make it compatible and you can reduce it down to the way that actually people work in healthcare, which most of them, pardon the dog again, they wander around with an iPad or a Samsung without a battery going on fire, and they move from place to place in the clinical care setting, and they want to see different views depending on where they are. They don't care about appointments when they're seeing a patient on the ward, for example. They don't care much about military history when they're seeing a patient on the ward. I'm just trying to say that there is flexibility in what you're presenting that just needs to have a little more human and technology touch to the future that we're all facing.
Well, so it does work just fine on Internet Explorer as a browser, since it's a browser-based solution. So, I mean, you know, you can use your Windows computer as a clinician and do just fine. It's the development side that right now we're still struggling to get it all to build correctly on Windows. The right Windows developer could probably make it work in no time. But
understood,
that's
and
not me.
Great presentation, and much appreciated, and thanks for your patience.
Share my screen to show one last slide. Okay, thank you, Brent. I know it's already 4 o'clock, so I just wanted to give a plug to the next month's OSEHRA Innovation webinar. Next month, October 18th, we will have DSS, Deanna Clark, presenting open source Vista innovation for VA, the intersection of progress and process. We'll be sending out mailings toward the end of this month so people can register for the next month's webinar. Again, thank you, Brent. This is a great demo, and we look forward to continue to work with you, and maybe we get a part 2 version on the eHMP development. So we'll see you again probably in the next few months. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending.